Hello and welcome, Hare Krishna, and welcome to the GBC Strategic Planning Team's ongoing celebration of ISKCON's incorporation and Srila Prabhupada's establishment of the 7 purposes of ISKCON. And this session, we're focusing on purpose number 5, which Prabhupada wrote as to erect for the members and for society at large, a holy place of transcendental pastimes dedicated to the personality of Krishna. And I'm very excited. My name is Braja District, and I'm very excited to be interviewing Her Grace Jagattarini Devi. She is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada's and has an amazing history we can't get into all the details of today, but she had this blossoming acting career, was in a movie with Mick Jagger, and she gave that all up to serve Srila Prabhupada and to help start the Krishna consciousness movement in Hong Kong. Also, we have a special relationship because she's my spiritual master's wife. So I'm very excited about this opportunity to interview her and to discuss how she created a holy dham in Perth, Australia, of all places, and an outreach program called the Sacred India Gallery. So I think what we're going to do first, Mataji, is to show a video that introduces the Sacred India Gallery. And if you could just tell us like what we're seeing as the video is going on, and then we'll start our discussion. Is that all right with you?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, here it is. It's rolling.
So this is a video made by Prananath Prabhu for our website to introduce the public in Australia, specifically in Perth, to our Sacred India Gallery. So we're coming in the front door, and you'll see here a description of where the sacred places that we're representing are, namely Navadweep. We show some simple living for the benefit of the public who can relate to that in a museum style with panels on the walls. Then we introduce Lord Chaitanya Bhaktivedanta Thakur as the founder of Navadweep and the Panchatattva as the theme of Navadweep. Now we're going to Puri, Jagannath Puri, the temple, something of the culture, something of the locality. And when we open the doors, we're very fortunate to be able to take darshan of Lord Jagannath. We see the temple here, and we go around, we hear about Haridas Thakur and other personalities. These beautiful doors enter into Vrindavan, or Krishna in Vrindavan. And this is the diorama section. These are small miniature dioramas. Each one of them was made at a particular time. This is Govardhan, lifting of Govardhan Hill. And this is Kaliya Leela. Kaliya is dancing on, Krishna is dancing on Kaliya. This one is called Going Home, Coming Home. And Krishna is coming home. We take many different groups through the gallery on guided tours. And here is Sri Radharaman Prabhu, who actually takes most of the tours. This is our local MLA, an Italian artist, and a lot of our community children. This is a university group who came very enthusiastically to see the gallery. And this is the last exhibit. This is the place where they sit in front of Gopinath.
All right, Paul, wonderful. So, you know, for me, and I see seeing this, and it's such an incredible exhibition and program for people who are introducing them to Krishna consciousness. And obviously, something like that just doesn't manifest out of thin air. So could you tell us about how this all began and how it started, this whole idea?
Yes. Well, I would say this idea began in Vrindavan. We were living in Vrindavan for around about 10 years. And living in India, you have a kind of a luxury that you can visit other sacred places just by getting on a train, not a plane. Of course, now you can get on a plane and make it even faster. So I used to regularly visit Puri, regularly visit Mayapur, Navadweep, and there in Vrindavan. So in 1996, we came to live in Perth, Western Australia. And anyone who knows their geography knows that that's the most isolated city in the whole world. And so I really missed my time in the Dhams. And in 1997, a friend sent me a very small Krishna deity, about 1 inch in size.
Wow.
And we named him Gopinath. And he was too small to really worship or do any kind of formal anything for. And so then by the time we set him up on a tiny little space, I had to make a little seat and a few things so that he was noticeable. He was so small. And in 1998, I went back to Vrindavan to find him a Radha, because we don't worship Krishna alone. At that time, I found a Radha. I had a Radharani carved, very small, and the worker carved two. He wanted to see which I wanted, so I took them both. And then we made also other figures that represented different stories and leelas in those holy places. Then when we came back, I set up an altar. I think we have a picture of that. And on the bottom level of the altar, I placed the different acharyas, including, of course, our Guru Parampara and Srila Prabhupada, the 6 Goswamis, and the 5 great devotees that came after the Goswamis, Krishnadas Kaviraj, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sachi Devi, Vishnupriya Devi, and others. And that was the bottom of our altar. Then on the second level, I made a simple display of Mayapur, Navadvip, which is essentially the Panchatattva. This was made, I made this by myself. It wasn't for the public. This was just my own personal meditation. Then on the third level, we had Jagannath Puri. So you can see there Rathayatra, Gambhira, up, inside, outside, Ramananda Roy seeing Lord Chaitanya as Radha and Krishna, and going to the darshan of the Jagannath temple. And on the top, I made a little place for our small Gopinath and his 2 Radhas. Now, anyone would ask, how could he have 2 Radhas? And the answer became that one became Radha and the other one became, like in the Gopinath Mandir in Vrindavan, it became Radha's sister Ananga Manjari. This is the worship of Gopinath, Radha Gopinath in the temple in Vrindavan. So I make different displays on the top, different leelas. This is the peacock dance. I have a boat leela, another leela, and instead of changing their clothes or worshipping them in the standard way, because they're so small, and I'm more of an artist than a pujari, I change the leelas regularly for Gopinath's satisfaction. So every festival day, I would make another little leela for the top, a Govardhan leela, a Rasa leela, with these small, small, small figures. And at first I'd get these figures carved in Vrindavan because I couldn't imagine making such small little sized personalities. And in 2000, I found that if I pressed these carved figures into some clay, they would harden and create a mold. And this was a revolution for me because this meant I could make my own figures. So then I started to make more and more of these, and they started to expand, and we needed another room to keep them all in. And we got a caravan and took everything out of the caravan and set it up like a portable gallery. And this kept going. And then in 2002, we decided that we wanted a place to live where we could have a small display that would be open to the public. So my dear friend Suchirani, who has given birth to such a wonderful son as Ananda Tirtha Prabhu and his family, Suchirani, myself, and Sri Radharaman Prabhu, the three of us went into a property together which had 5 acres and a suitable house that we could extend one section into becoming a public open home gallery. And so we all moved in there into that property in 2002, and we started creating the Sacred India Gallery then.
So it's 18 years since then.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. There were many, many challenges in creating this.
And when you would send me across the street, I think you were living in Australia, and you would send me across the street to Gopi and Govind's to pick up things. Were those some of the, if I remember, some of the cowherd boys and things? That
Yes. Yes. I started with the 8 gopis, and then I made the 8 manjaris because I had a picture. One of the shopkeepers said there's 8 of these. They sit on a lotus flower, get them all. So I followed the lead and I got them. Then I got the cowherd boys. Then I got Mother Yasoda. And
just expands.
It just went on like a family.
It's amazing. So then what happened after 2002?
Well, then we started to build the gallery. We had one of our first crises was that our dear friend Suchirani passed away.
Yes, I remember that very well.
Yeah, that was in 2004, and I thought that was the end. I told my husband, why did we come out here? Now we have no support basis, and we tried to think it out intelligently, but it's all fallen apart. But it didn't fall apart. And so I would say quite honestly that I was doubtful from the very beginning that we could make this work. My doubt, and I think others would share it, was how could we introduce miniature Vrindavan Leelas to the ordinary people who may want to come to this gallery and see it? How could we actually bridge the gap between material life as it stands and these Dham Leelas that are perhaps even above the level of the average devotee to meditate upon? So what we did is we decided to establish a section. First we began with just Vrindavan, then we established a section for Puri and a section for Mayapur, and the whole thing worked together as a guided tour. The first 2 sections, Navadvip and Puri, are like a museum. There are exhibits specially designed to entertain and to converse with the public who come and make them comfortable that they're just going to a gallery experience or a museum experience. And then, as you saw very briefly on that video, they come to these beautiful purple magenta doors. And that's the entrance to Vrindavan. And outside the doors, before they go in, we stop them and we explain to them all those things about Vrindavan. It's located in northern India, has a population of this, they have festivals. We talk about the external Vrindavan outside the doors. And then we open the doors, but they still don't get in. We open the doors into an ante-room. And in the ante-room, they hear, if they're a suitable audience, they hear about Krishna and what is Leela. This is the panel on the wall. And if they're a very, very unsuitable audience who would not understand anything, then there's another panel on the wall that talks about the lady who made them. And our tour guides go directly there, and they just talk about this nice lady. She lived in India. She's an artist. And they play down the spiritual elements and make them feel comfortable that they're just going to see this nice lady's artwork. And then when they're set like that, that's arranged, then the guide will open a translucent curtain. First of all, they turn on a light so that behind the translucent curtain, the light comes on, and the light goes off where they are, and the light comes on inside. And the music begins. And then the curtain opens. And then they come straight into a little diorama that says above it, Krishna in Vrindavan. And it's magical. With anyone. They don't have to be devotees or anything.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada writes that even a non-devotee who visits Vrindavan Mathura will feel some separation from Krishna. Yes. And so you've created that in, of all places, Perth, Australia. And it sounds like they're having that kind of experience.
I think so. And you see, one thing that we wanted to do, you used the word there that we were interested in, experience. So we don't preach. We don't tell them anything specifically directed towards them becoming devotees. We teach. So along the way on this guided tour, you can explain so many things, but in an objective way, that this is our culture, this is the culture, this is what Vrindavan is like. And in this teaching mode, we can tell them so much more than we would be able to tell them if we were going to try to preach to them. And so we make it, and one devotee who came through said that we make accessible to people who know nothing, or devotees, or Indian guests, an arrangement that wherein the philosophy comes in the form that was easy to appreciate and access.
Well, let me ask you a question about that, because you know the fifth purpose that Prabhupada said, right, was to erect for the members, society at large, which is what you're doing, a holy place of transcendental pastimes dedicated to the personality of Krishna. Was there a time when you kind of like, because you say you got this property, so it was just a property in Perth, outside of Perth, right? I haven't been there, but many people I speak to have, friends that I have, and they say they get the feeling that it's a dham. They don't. It's not just even a place with exhibits, but it's. Was there a time when you kind of realized, oh, this is a dham? When did that kind of strike you that you create, you know, by you and your husband and the other devotees have created a dham?
Well, Braj, when we moved there, my family was already full grown. They were already out on their own. And also, Ananda Tirtha was living overseas, and his life was already in motion as well. So all three of us, you could say, myself and my husband, Sri Radharaman Prabhu, who is a lifelong brahmachari, and Suchi Rani, whose family is now gone, none of us had a need for a house. So together, our mindset was that we wanted to find a place we could dedicate fully to our deity.
Gopinath,
little Gopinath.
Amazing, this big property and deities.
My husband used to say, he's a little man with a big plan.
Yes. And would you mind, or is it too intimate or something to tell us who Gopinath's history before you got him?
Well, that's also interesting. Two things. First of all, one of my friends was taking care of Upendra. I don't know who knows
Upendra Prabhu, Prabhupada disciple, right?
Yes, Upendra Prabhu was one of the first disciples in San Francisco, and he served for the Prabhupada diligently at different times. But at other times, he dropped off the charts. He went into lapses, you could say. And sometimes for long periods of time, it was not clear where he was. But then towards the end of his life, they had a reunion in Australia. And there were two devotees came and started the preaching in Australia. And he was one of them. So the devotees, in their compassion, they said, where is Upendra? We want Upendra to come. And so out of his lostness, he went back to Australia. Then, this was in the 80s. And then he disappeared again. And then it was discovered that he had hepatitis C. And so the devotees in Australia, they paid for his fare to Australia, brought him back to Australia, and took him through the last stages of his life out of great appreciation for what he had done. One of my friends was...
How nice. Very nice that they did that.
Yes. One of my friends was part of the nursing team, and she received this little pouch, a small pouch with this small Gopinath inside. She told me in a letter that Upendra had that deity since 1967.
No kidding.
He found the deity in San Francisco. And that even though he had his roller coaster ride in his spiritual life, one thing he did was he always kept his bead bag, even if he wasn't chanting. And even if he was going to places where you wouldn't wear a bead bag. And so he had kept this deity. So she said to me, I had a feeling that this deity was meant for you.
Wow.
So I received the deity.
But that also means that the deity was sometimes in the presence of Prabhupada.
I think so.
Wow.
And also, the other thing was that was the first ISKCON deity to come to Australia. And I met Upendra and Bali Madan. There was only one other devotee there at that time, and he was American. So they came in January, and I met them soon after. And then I left and went to America. So somehow or another, Gopinath and I met up.
That's an amazing. So what was it? What did Bhurijana Prabhu say? That a small deity with a big plan. So
he used to call him sometimes affectionately the little man with the small plan. And he used to also say his name is Gopinath of Dulwich. Dulwich is the name of the street that we're living in. Right. And he used to call him Gopinath of Dulwich, or God for short.
Very good. So this plan was unfolding.
Yes.
As you were creating this Dham and the gallery, you must obviously, like anything else in Krishna consciousness, you must have faced some challenges. What were some of those?
Well, we faced the normal challenge, which was finances.
Right.
We didn't have any money. It took us actually 10 years to make this, because one of our challenges was that we really wanted people to come in here and take it seriously. We didn't want something that was like a kind of a put together little home thing that people would look in and say, yes, that's very nice, and leave immediately. We wanted people to come and have an experience. That's the word I was looking for. We wanted them to have an experience of what it was like to go to Vrindavan. It didn't matter if they could understand the Leelas or not. The Leelas were almost secondary for those people. And for those who already understood Vrindavan, they stay down there a long time. The tours can go for an hour and a half. Narayani, when she visits us, she stays down there and chants all her japa down there.
Sounds like Narayani.
It's an amazing experience.
Wow. So finances was one challenge, naturally, and I could imagine that, because looking at the video, I mean, it looked like a professional, I live in Washington, D.C. We have the Smithsonian, all the museums downtown here that are obviously cost millions and millions of dollars to create, but that in its own miniature way looks really like, as we would say, a pucka. So so finances was one. There must have been some other challenges though as well, right?
Well, quite honestly, I was out of my depth by a long way. I only knew how to make those little miniature dioramas, which were tiny. Everything else was new to us all. And by Gopinath's mercy, this is what we say around here, by Gopinath's mercy, other people came. We had some wonderful crafts devotees who came, who did the larger work. We had Baladev Prabhu from the Philippines,
Oh, yes.
a devotee Tanya from South Africa. She did all the textured paintwork. And others, we had carpenters who came with the inspiration of one very dear devotee to us called Premananda here in Perth. He sent his carpenters to do 3/4 of the work.
Wow.
We had people donated things, donated the marble, donated their time to lay the marble, just ordinary people, because they got behind the mood that this is not, it's not a business thing. It has nothing to do with business. It has nothing to do with kind of like your religion and my religion. This is something of a display that we want to give to the world.
Mm.
And also I'd have to say that Sri Radharaman Prabhu, who's largely in charge of everything in the gallery, is a remarkable person.
Well, he's a saint.
He's a saint. So he's a monk, and he's always dressed as a monk, and and they're not uncomfortable with dealing with a real monk.
Right. Well, and he gives off the monk vibe also.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Very much so. Yeah, I'm always embarrassed when I'm with him because he's like, because we're both disciples of the same guru, but he's a much better disciple than I am.
Well, he loves people. He loves taking tours. He loves just taking people down there and taking them through. And my role is at the end, I come in whatever condition I'm in at the moment. He runs upstairs to me and says, can you come down? There's a fabulous tour. Just come down and say hello. So I come down and take a photo with the people. They thank me. I explain to them that I'll accept that thanks on behalf of so many people. I didn't do all of this. I conceived of it only. And we have a really nice rapport with the people. We've had lots of people coming through, actually. He says we have at least 600 people come through in a year. And we're not open, by the way, all the time. We're open on weekends and public holidays, and for private tours up to even one person who would really like to visit the gallery. Then our Sri, our tour guide, his heart is so soft. He's down there turning on all the lights and taking them through.
And how far are you from downtown Perth, if there is such a thing?
Well, we're only probably 3/4 of an hour. But our property is in an area that's currently rural, but is about to boom into suburbs.
Like so many cities in the world, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But we're also next to a national park, which they can't touch.
Oh,
so,
that's great.
Yes. So we have one side of our property is always going to be scenic.
Wonderful. By the way, we have a comment here from Prema Tarangani. She says, so lovely to see you live and hear about Gopinath Dham. Can't wait to visit once the pandemic calms down. Very nice.
Thank you.
Were there other challenges? Okay, so you got the finances slowly over 10 years. We also got different people donating their time and I guess materials as well.
Yes.
Were there any other major hurdles that had to be overcome, or were those the two primary ones?
Well, I think that for me, always the biggest problem was like, how do you introduce Krishna and his divine pastimes to the average ordinary man or woman straight off the street? How do you do that? And so what we did was, as I was mentioning, we created like a museum effect on the first 2 dhams. That means it appeals to their intellect. Right. So they're going, oh yes, okay, I understand that. It's in India. We set it up almost like a Lonely Planet introduction to Vrindavan.
Okay.
So they're able to do that right until they get to the doors of Vrindavan. And then in Vrindavan, it had to be incredibly beautiful. That was the thing we wanted. It had to be incredibly beautiful. So when we first set it up, we had all these boxed dioramas all around the room, like on all sides. And I bought a very nice carpet for the middle, cost a lot of money, and we thought, we're finished with that. And then my husband came and he said, Vrindavan needs a lot of work. and that was in 2008.
Uh-huh.
And the next 4 years all went into Vrindavan. So we created a kind of a way they walk in and they walk around. We built structures and panels and so forth so that they can't see where they're going. We wanted them to get lost in Vrindavan.
Mm.
And so they walk in first, we don't talk about anything factual there. We just let them explore.
Nice.
And as I said, on the basis of one of two things, either they're exploring because they know it's Vrindavan. They can ask questions, of course, but we don't have a dialogue for that part. They can ask questions, or they can just wander around and look at this lovely lady's artwork.
Did you have monkeys who can steal their glasses?
Oh, yes. We have a couple hidden up high, and that's for the children. We even have a full-size tree in there.
No kidding.
With leaves and flowers, and the monkey is in the tree.
Uh-huh.
And everything we made ourselves. We didn't buy any plastic foliage. Every leaf we cut out. Every flower was stuck on personally.
Wow.
And
well,
it was amazing.
That is amazing. I'm thinking about, I lived in Vrindavan for about 20 years, and when we would have guests come from the West, not non-devotees, it was always a challenge to try to give them the experience, especially because let's face it, from the external point of view, and especially now, I moved there in '89. Now it's so different. It's much more commercial and crowded and everything. But the open sewage and the whole, the whole, everyone probably listening to this, yeah. And we would try to get them to like Govardhan, parts of Govardhan that are really beautiful, or Varshana, certain places that externally gave them that. So in one sense, it sounds like on one level you have an easier job than when they come to the Vrindavan, because they don't have to, because you could control the atmosphere of their experience more than we can when they actually, drive into Chattigarh Road and see the transcendental chaos.
Yes. Well, the thing was that we had also a desire to bring people to Vrindavan and Puri and Mayapur, but we wanted to well prepare them. So by doing that, what we have extracted is the essence of what those dhams are actually about. You see, these three dhams form like a triangle. They're all interdependent. And that was why we put them on three different levels in that beginning altar. Because essentially what we did was I made that small altar, and then others built a large replica of that you could walk in and explore. But the essence is right there in that altar of what we were trying to do.
Amazing.
And Srila Prabhupada sitting right beside. So we didn't include Prabhupada in the dhams. We put him beside the dhams. But he's the one that we will enter the dhams through. So you're right. We have an advantage here because we can control the atmosphere. We can show them the beauty, the inner essence of the dham, as Srila Prabhupada was saying, to erect places of Krishna's pastimes. This is the essence of Vrindavan.
Right. No pickpockets. You don't have to worry about pickpockets.
No pickpockets. And then, despite unfortunately, the COVID came first, but we were intending to take a tour this year to Vrindavan with the same amount of people, 7, 8, 9 of the people who had been coming regularly to visit us, and show them the sweetness of Vrindavan beyond the veil.
Wow, how amazing!
Another thing we've done, because we've had my son also is very involved, and he kept telling us you have to have a regular program for them, and because they're not yet, we're not collecting devotees per se. We started something called the Wisdom Tree, and we have
right. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's
but
really
before you do that, before you say that, I just need to put a little plug in for your wonderful son, Jai Prabhupada Das. If anyone has the time to Google, I asked them to smile, right?
So
If they
I
Google,
asked him to smile.
yeah, if you Google that, and you'll come to his website that has this amazing photos from all parts of the world where people are very stern, and then he asked them to smile, and then he took a picture of them smiling. It's great. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. And but back to that point. Go ahead.
So my son is he represents, I would say, he represents the outside world for us in a very expert way. He knows everything about Krishna consciousness from his birth, but at this particular time, he's exploring the concept of becoming a life coach. Mm-hmm. So his interest is more secular. And so what he can do is he acts as a media between ourselves and the world in telling us what the world needs and in telling them what spirituality is like from a perspective that we can't exactly convey.
Oh, nice.
So he's been invaluable to us in terms of setting up the ongoingness of the gallery.
And by the way, there's the website right in front of you there. So I asked them to smile.com.
So he suggested we should have a kirtan program every Saturday night, and Sri Vrindavan Prabhu is a wonderful kirtaniya.
It's true.
So he leads the kirtan, and then I was requested to speak something. To speak something every week is hard. It's much easier if you're speaking to devotees, because we speak the same language, ISKCON language. But when you're speaking to non-devotees, they don't know your terminology. They can't relate to what you're trying to tell them. Mm-hmm. So what I did was, last year we started, and I had just come back from Vrindavan, and I think you know, Braj, that my other love is the trees of Vrindavan. I've been longing to write something about the trees of Vrindavan.
For decades.
For decades, yes. So I came back surcharged with tree energy, and we sat outside under the trees in our garden of peace, and I would just talk, linking together something about the trees of Vrindavan, something about trees in general, something about Bhagavad Gita, putting these ingredients together into a recipe that ordinary people could accomplish. And so we did that all last year. And this year we're doing it online. So I make a regular short video of some subject, trying to keep that balance of spiritual and human interest strong. And Sri puts that out every week along with the curriculum.
Oh, nice. Oh, nice. Okay, so you had these challenges. You've obviously, on a certain level, you've overcome them because there's this beautiful gallery. What are some of the outcomes? You know, maybe you've already spoken to that to some extent. Is 600 people and all that. Was there anything else about kind of the results of this whole project?
One thing I would like to share is that Bhakti Swami came in 2016. And I think we have a few photos of that visit. He went through the gallery, he loved it. And he asked us also, is it popular? How are you spreading this? How can you make it bigger, more people coming? And we shared our ideas with him. We've actually had quite a few senior people who visit the Perth temple. As part of their visit to the temple, they'll be brought out to a gallery, because we're an active part of the Perth temple community. Mm-hmm. So they come out, and some people from India, I've discovered, they're not used to thinking small. You know, they think big. So when they go through the gallery, they have more of a hard time. They get a little bit restless with the minutiae of the detailed work. And then there are other people who come and they just get stunned Like, how could you make this?
Mm.
How could you put all the work that you put into this? And we just say, well, it's our love. It was for us. We didn't make it for the world, but now the world it's available to the world. But it was our meditation on Vrindavan.
And didn't you win some awards?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when I first started, before we had any idea of a gallery, I made a scene. I saw they had a miniature club in Perth, and they were having an exhibition. And so I decided to enter with a scene in a clay pot.
We saw a picture of that in the video for a second. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So the scene in the clay pot, I found in some shop a clay pot that looked like a pot from India with the small top and the rest of it was round. And so I made a scenery inside the pot of the peacock dance. The peacock dance is the one that you saw on the top of the altar also. And we entered that. They were a bit astonished. Nobody made videos nobody made videos that small. Yes. But the peacock dance included Radha and Krishna in the front, dancing as peacocks, and all the young gopi girls all also dressed in the same color and the same dress.
Wow.
And there was a little waterfall in there that actually poured water. There were peacocks and little gopis with their instruments, their musical team. And it had lights inside as well. So when you look inside, there's a world inside the pot. So we won on that one.
Really? You won?
Yeah. And then, as we were leaving, they said, next year's competition is, and I was like, yes. And they said, it's a scene in a soft drink bottle. I said, a soft drink bottle. I can't do a scene about Krishna in a soft drink bottle. But we thought about it long and hard and decided to try again. And we bought a soft drink bottle and sat it there for a long time looking at it. How can you make a Vrindavan in a soft drink bottle? And it had to be a 1.5 liter soft drink bottle.
A big one, yeah.
A big one.
Right. So
anyway, we tried at the last minute. We tried, and we made that's called the Magic Flute, and it's 2 layers: bottom layer, top layer, and in the very top where the bottle goes like this, there's a scene. Each one you can see Krishna playing his flute, and the little scenes inside revolve. So there's 6 different little scenes of Krishna playing his flute. At the top, he's playing his flute and calling the gopis. It's so tiny, and we won that one.
You won that one as well. Wow.
And then we started building a gallery, and so we lost touch with the miniature fairs. Right. We'd sort of stepped into another challenge.
Right. Well, you go out on top when having won twice.
Yes. Why not?
Right. Right. So what does the future hold? I mean, for someone like myself, I see something like that, and I say, God, that would be just so fabulous if our temples had. So what is the future for this?
Well, Braj, the interesting thing that I've tried to explain, and it's hard because we're sort of almost like on the side of the temple. We're not in the temple.
Right.
Is that this is a project for somebody who's an affiliate of the temple rather than the temple.
Right.
Because the role of the temple is to preach. That's what a temple is there for. If someone comes to a temple, you tell them all about your organization and you preach and try to encourage them to join. But because this is the Sacred India Gallery, we respect the trust of people who come thinking it's just a neutral gallery space.
Sure.
And so we inject spirituality into them through teaching rather than preaching. Mm-hmm. So we would love to do more of that. We would love to have more people living here, if we could manage it, who were actively involved with the gallery. But we have our little team. We have one very nice young man living here now who has a galah, an Australian bird, on his shoulder most of the time. His name is Paul, and he single-handedly
The bird's named Paul, or he's named Paul?
His name is Paul. The bird's name is Summer.
Okay.
And Paul is starting an organic, self-contained garden in one section of the property, all by himself, not using anything other than his own desire to do it. And slowly hearing some Bhagavad Gita and coming for kirtan and so on, and becoming a regular part of us. We worry sometimes, but less about succession, obviously. Who's going to take this on? And we have discussed it with, you would say, our Gopinath, and we're ready to do whatever he wants. If he wants to say, the council says you can't stay here anymore, we want to build a school here and you have to leave immediately, then we're ready to leave. And if he says stay here, stay here, stay here, this can go on into the future, we would be wonderfully happy that it did. And whilst it's here, we are looking to build a facility so that we can have classes, more classes, and different events and so forth to bring people here. Right now we're working out of our lounge room, and we would like to integrate more into the society outside, into their school system, we're ready to work with the public closely. We like it. And we feel that Srila Prabhupada would appreciate that.
Well, I agree. I really agree with that. I was thinking, I live in Washington, D.C., and we have 12 acres of land here, which is just incredible in this very wealthy part of town. And
yes.
When Prabhupada saw that, he said, build a beautiful garden. So, talk about, I don't know if we want to call it indirect preaching, but, like you were just saying, sharing the experience rather than, anyway, preaching. And he said that make the garden so beautiful that the wives of the senators will bring their husbands just for the garden.
Yeah.
And so I get that. And also, have you ever been to Radhadesh in Belgium? Yes. So I don't know when you were there last, but now they've built 2 art galleries on the property.
Wow.
And they have ongoing exhibits. Mahaprabhu's father was a famous artist in South America, and so he grew up with that. So he's always bringing new exhibits from India and different things like that. And people come and they really appreciate the cultural aspect. And it's not just Bhagavad Gita shlokas, or as it were. But so Prabhupada had that side of his preaching. Make the garden beautiful.
Yes. But Braja, that reminded me when you said that of how when I first met Srila Prabhupada, when I was making a rapid transit from material life to spiritual life, and I met him in Los Angeles in 1970, and he asked me, "So you're from England?" And I said, "No, I was an actress." And he said, "Oh." Then he said, "You should put on plays." And he said, "This will attract a higher class of people." He said, "Now at this time we are attracting hippies, but this will attract a higher class of people." And he referred to the culture of Krishna consciousness.
Oh, nice.
So we have that, you could say, already on display. And now all they need is somebody to bring them a little closer to it, to explain it to them in a way they can understand and in a way they can feel comfortable to come and go from. So this is what we feel our role is, and we feel very fortunate to have it. We love this place.
Well, it's interesting because, you're in my mind a very advanced devotee. Sri Radha Raman Prabhu is, like I said, a saint, and of course my Guru Maharaj. You have these amazing devotees there on the property. I was reminded, this is a little off the topic, but not completely, because of Prabhupada's instruction to you about your puppet shows.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And how devotees, so many different generations of children in ISKCON and adults in ISKCON have gotten so much over the years and the decades watching. And I think some of them are on YouTube still today.
Yes, I believe so.
The puppet shows that you did. I guess you also designed those the puppets, etc.
I did. I made all the puppets. I mean, I look at them and I just sort of go, "Oh dear," but that was where I was at the time in terms of my skills and so forth, and I loved doing that as well. That was connected very much to Satsarup Maharaj and Gita Nagari, where we were living. Also a rural environment, somewhat like Vrindavan. Because a rural environment for an artist gives them some freedom as opposed to a complex urban situation where you have lots of things that you have to do all the time and maintain. And those puppets also were a real part of my telling the story, like Prabhupada said, to put on plays for Krishna. Those puppets were that. And I have met young people from different parts of the world at different times who said to me, I grew up with those puppet shows. And that makes me so happy because that was what we wanted. I was hoping, yes, I was hoping to evolve in my puppetry to a more sophisticated level. But instead I ended up in Vrindavan and dealing with the boys there, putting on plays, and wandering around Vrindavan and collecting little pieces of dust and twigs. And
oh, that was a whole other thing you did, those boxes that so many devotees got over the years. Yeah, I remember. Yes, memories of Vrindavan. Those are wonderful. We still have ours. I remember, I guess, before I knew Bhurijana Prabhu, and I was watching the plays, and like, why does Judd Bart have a New York accent? Not why, but I thought it was kind of cool that Judd Bart from Brooklyn originally, or whoever it was.
Those plays were made in a very endearing but awkward way. We didn't have very much skill, so we made them on a shoestring. And Sringananda Prabhu, he put in as much as he could to get them up and running. I would love to see somebody do them in a very classical way again. Oh, that was another sad story, was that those puppets, they remained in Los Angeles and we went to Vrindavan. They were supposed to be sent back to me, so I would still have them, on a BBT truck. And actually, they came back, but I wasn't informed at the time. And they ended up in the basement of the Philadelphia temple. And lo and behold, they had a pipe leak. And the puppets were all in silver suitcases, you know, those silver trunks.
Yeah, I know those silver trunks.
The basement was flooded and the water seeped up through the trunks. And all the puppets, except I think 1 or 2 or 3, were destroyed.
I'm sorry to hear that. I
made extra ones in Vrindavan. I have a few with me even now. I have actually one puppet that went on the 1987 first Braj Mandal
Prikrama. Oh yeah, 1987. That's right. That was the first one.
Took a puppet stage with us then. So I have those puppets actually that went on the first Braj Mandal Prikrama.
Oh, nice. So we only have a few minutes left, but I'd like to, and tell me if this is too hard a question. I'm not trying to make hard questions, but you have so much appreciation for the dhams, plural. And what is it that makes a dham special? Or how do you know when you're in a dham as opposed to just another part of this planet? You know, how did you develop that appreciation? Any question about understanding the dham or appreciating it? How did you get to develop such a deep appreciation for the dhams?
Well, to tell you honestly, in my case, I got to appreciate by wandering around, but it was a different era. There was no books, there were no photos at that time, there was no internet, I didn't interact greatly with the people of Vrindavan because I had read in Srila Prabhupada's book, in the Chaitanya Chaitamrita, that one shouldn't intimately associate with the residents of the dham. But I just was fascinated by the thought that this place belonged to Krishna. So I gained my experience in a sort of a out on the streets way, not from a study way. But I would say, in terms of a dham, what is a dham? Vrindavan is special because this is the place where Krishna's Leela comes. It descends and touches the earth at this place when he appears in this world. So it's exceptional. You can't make a Vrindavan. Vrindavan is Vrindavan. But if you want to make a dham-like atmosphere, which is what Srila Prabhupada was speaking of in these what would you call them? His purposes. You have to put the primary influence, the primary emphasis on, I want this to be yours. I want you to enjoy this. I want everything for you, everything for you. Now, I'll tell you immediately without you having to ask me, I can't stay in that consciousness for more than a second here and there. I go around here with the same way that I would anywhere else. I'm not perfect or pure, but I return to that as the principle. That's the principle. This place is meant to glorify you. This place is meant to make you happy. It's like a temple is meant to be like that also. Srila Prabhupada referred to the temples sometimes as being holy dhams. But the glory of a dham over a temple is that it should be more expansive. It should be, you go to Vrindavan, you can walk out of the temple and in the temple. And the area surrounding the temple has also got a spiritual significance.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
that's why we didn't even expect to end up with 5 acres. We had no idea what we were doing. And when we were directed to this property, we spent a long time saying, can we afford this? And what will we do to maintain this land? But that helps to make it a dham.
Gopinath had a plan. we have 3 minutes. Did you want to show that other video? Or should we just keep talking for 3 more minutes? What would you prefer?
What do you think would be best for those who are listening and who are visiting?
Why don't we just continue? Because I have one last question about the dham. Okay.
And also,
we can put the link to those videos. If you could try to do that. We have some very, as you can see, very together technical. So this is a 3-minute question that could probably go on for 2 hours. But so when we were in the dham together in the 80s. And, Vrindavan was quiet. There was maybe one car that passed on Bhaktivedanta Swami Marg per day, right? And we all know how incredibly different it is today. High-rise apartments, constant traffic jam outside of Krishna Balaram Mandir, constant. Mangalarti used to be quiet and meditative, and now, it's packed, right? So are there any, you could say, of course, Vrindavan is a state of mind, like you said, and also it's, there's just this superficial things that I just mentioned. But is there a trick or is there a mindset? How can we go to Vrindavan today and pierce beyond the traffic and the high rises and the commercialism and kind of experience the Dham?
Well, everybody's different, but some thoughts that come to my mind. One is that you should prepare long before you go there by trying to understand something of Krishna and his pastimes, by reading Krishna book, by saying, I'm going to Vrindavan and I want this visit to be something extraordinary for me. A second one is that whilst you're there, not to make your visit too complicated. Because I say that because this year, 2000, at the beginning, I was in Vrindavan in January, and so were so many other people at the time when I was about to leave. And then somehow or another, I got rejected at the airport because I didn't have the right papers, and I had to return to Vrindavan for another 6 weeks.
Wow.
Now, my family had gone. All my friends had already said goodbye. I'd bought all the things I wanted at in the shops. Everything was done. There was just me and my hand luggage. I left my luggage in Delhi. And those 6 weeks took me back to those early days, despite the fact that Vrindavan is now very chaotic. And it was largely because I didn't have any other obligation pressing on me or people I had to meet at a certain time. And to the best of my ability with my old legs, I wandered around the places that I remembered. They'd changed, but I hadn't changed as much as I thought I had. And it was quite a profound experience. And I tried very hard to look beyond the chaos that's there as well.
Right.
That's another thing. And another thing, one last one, is that somebody told me once, when you go to Vrindavan, you should chant a mantra. Every moment you should chant a mantra. And that mantra goes like this. Everything you see is not what it looks like it is.
How nice. How nice. Well, Your Grace Jagattarini Devi, thank you so much for this enlightening and enlivening discussion about the holy dhams and about how you have fulfilled Prabhupada's so wonderfully, one of Prabhupada's purposes of ISKCON. And well, that's one thing that inspires me. I think every ISKCON devotee can find something in those 7 purposes that can inspire them in their service. And, you know, you've latched on to this 5th one, of course, others as well, in such a inspiring way. And we thank you so much for your time and for your service.
Thank you, Braj.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna to everyone. Hare Krishna.